I stood there in stunned silence as $22,000 worth of meticulously gathered winter supplies turned to ash and twisted metal right in front of me, while four smug HOA board members watched with satisfied grins, acting like they'd just won the jackpot. Those weren't just random boxes of food and gear. They were the lifeline I'd built over months to keep my 78-year-old mother, Sarah, safe through the unforgiving Colorado Rockies winters, especially with her advancing dementia. Cheryl Kensington, the self-appointed queen of the board, called it an emergency cleanup and waved around her clipboard like a royal decree. What she and her cronies, Trevor Ashworth, Marissa Vale, and Douglas Whitfield, never imagined was that my grandfather's original 1962 property deed still granted our family exclusive control over the Pine Valley Spillway, the very mechanism that fed their prized artificial lake and kept their multi-million-dollar lakefront mansions looking like something out of a luxury brochure. At 52, after 2 decades operating heavy equipment, I knew better than most that preparation wasn't optional up here at 8,000 feet. It was survival. Winters could trap us for 6 months straight with blizzards dumping 4 feet of snow overnight, and temperatures cold enough to burst pipes before breakfast. I began stockpiling in August. Canned goods, propane, generator fuel, firewood, medical supplies, emergency water, everything labeled and organized precisely the way my mother needed it to feel secure in the fog of dementia. Routine was her anchor. Disrupting it wasn't just inconvenient, it was cruel. The community itself had been carved out in 1985 from part of my family's old ranch land. My grandfather had been shrewd enough to retain the water rights when he sold the acreage to developers. Most residents had no idea that the scenic lake they paid hefty HOA fees to maintain was actually controlled by the guy they sneered at for living in the eyesore, original property. That's exactly where Cheryl came in: designer outfits, fake sweet smile, passive-aggressive venom. She and her inner circle treated Pine Valley like their private country club. Trevor flipped houses and owned an $850,000 mansion with an illegally oversized heated pool. Marissa ran the treasurer's spot from her $920,000 rental retreat. Douglas managed vacation properties from his $780,000 lakefront spread. All 4 homes sat in zones that the original flood maps never should have allowed, but more on that later. October 23rd started as one of the good days. I'd driven Mom to Denver for her neurologist appointment, a long 6-hour round trip we couldn't skip. The doctor adjusted her meds. We grabbed her favorite ice cream on the way back, and she even had moments of clarity where the old Sarah peeked through. We pulled into the driveway around 4:30 p.m. to see 4 luxury cars parked out front and thick smoke curling up from our backyard. The smell hit first: melting plastic, burning rubber, chemicals from medical supplies. Mom started crying before she even understood why. That acrid odor meant her world was literally going up in flames. Cheryl stood supervising in her $3,000 coat, announcing it was an emergency fire hazard abatement based on reports of unsafe storage. The nearest neighbor was 200 yards away, and old Bill Henderson had been my lookout since childhood. No one else could have reported anything. They'd left a supposed 72-hour notice on the door, but we'd been gone since dawn. It didn't matter. 6 months of preparation, gone. Propane tanks popped like fireworks, diabetes meds melted into toxic puddles, and my mother wept for her familiar medicine boxes. With the first blizzard forecast in 3 days, arguing wouldn't restore anything. But as I watched the destruction, I remembered my grandfather's quiet lessons about water rights, patience, and how the best justice sometimes arrives disguised as nature itself. The next morning the retaliation arrived via certified mail, for separate complaints from different agencies, each signed by one of the board members as the concerned citizen. Health Department fines for food storage, fire marshal citations for propane, building code violations for the generator, environmental flags on fuel containers. Total potential penalties: $35,000 plus daily escalations that could bankrupt me by Christmas. But 20 years of dealing with inspectors had taught me that people in glass houses shouldn't throw regulatory stones. A quick trip to the county courthouse revealed the hypocrisy in dusty deed books. Trevor's mansion had an unpermitted propane system 3 times larger than mine. Cheryl's wine cellar ran on an oversized backup generator with no electrical permits. Marissa's rentals had massive fuel storage without environmental reviews. And buried in the 1985 development papers was the real prize. My family had retained exclusive spillway rights predating every one of their homes. I spent 3 days in the basement archives while the first snow fell outside, each page uncovering more leverage. Meanwhile, Mom kept asking where her medicine boxes had gone, her agitation growing with each explanation. Dementia turns change into terror, and every question fueled my resolve. By November, the board escalated to full character assassination. Overnight, I went from the guy who fixed plumbing for free to the dangerous hoarder endangering the neighborhood. Cheryl's slideshow at a community safety meeting turned propane tanks into bombs and canned goods into unsanitary hazards. Local suppliers cut me off. The hardware store, pharmacy, grocery store all citing concerns. My mother's home health aide quit after anonymous tips. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Isolation was deliberate, and in the mountains, it could be deadly. But the deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Public records showed a pattern. Over 3 years, 6 vulnerable residents, elderly, disabled, had been harassed with complaints, fines, and social pressure until they sold cheap to Pine Valley Properties LLC, whose managing partners were Cheryl, Trevor, Marissa, and Douglas. A systematic land grab, profiting millions by targeting the weak. Contacting the displaced families confirmed it. Same script, same playbook. I built a file that could make prosecutors salivate: bank records, transfers, complaint patterns. Then came the bombshell. The board had long-term Hawaii leases booked for the entire winter. While destroying our stockpile, they planned to flee the mountains, leaving their homes on minimal automated heat with zero real emergency prep. Irony at its finest. By February, I had enough for a federal conspiracy lawsuit, but the real power was still the spillway. Then March brought their desperate final move, a petition for emergency property seizure, claiming I was unstable and dangerous during spring melt. Adult Protective Services showed up, concerned for Mom. The hearing was set for March 15th, peak melt season. If they won, control of the water rights would transfer to them. My attorney uncovered perfection. Their lakefront home sat on falsified elevation certificates in the original flood easement zone my family retained. Insurance fraud, invalid policies, illegal construction permits. The easement gave us emergency drainage authority that superseded everything. And Colorado's record snowpack, 40% above normal, was about to melt. I documented everything: baseline photos, maintenance logs, weather data. This wouldn't be revenge. It would be responsible water management. The forecast for mid-March: 3 days of 70-plus degree heat after the coldest winter on record. Perfect conditions for massive runoff. On March 15th, the community center buzzed with 80 residents and Channel 7 News cameras rolling for the live broadcast the board had arranged to showcase their protection efforts. At 9:45 a.m., with temperatures already climbing, I activated full spillway release from the basement panel. 2 million gallons per hour surged through gates designed for exactly this. The lake dropped fast, but melt added volume faster, forcing overflows straight into their poorly drained luxury properties. By 10:30, while Cheryl lectured about my imminent threat, 30 inches of icy snowmelt flooded basements. Trevor's home theater became a swimming pool, 75-inch TVs floating like rafts. Cheryl's wine collection bobbed like corks. Marissa's spa vanished under muddy water. Douglas's rental gear disappeared beneath the tide. Phones rang simultaneously. Panic spread. Cheryl screamed accusations while standing knee-deep in overflow at the center. I held up decades of logs to the cameras. Just following standard spring melt protocols. Emergency drainage to prevent downstream flooding, like my grandfather did and his before him. Insurance denied claims due to fraud. Federal agents moved in. The board faced conspiracy, elder abuse, and fraud charges. Cheryl took 3 years in prison plus restitution. The others lost licenses, companies, reputations. Our lawsuit settled for over $1 million, plus compensation for the other victims. The corrupt HOA dissolved. A new resident council formed with protections for the vulnerable. I started the Mountain Winter Preparedness Fund with the money, stockpiles, medical loans, legal aid for those facing HOA abuse. Mom's routine stabilized. Her stress eased. The community healed, neighbors apologized, and Pine Valley became known for support instead of predation. The mountains have their own way of delivering justice, patient, inevitable, and perfectly timed. And sometimes, when people abuse power long enough, nature itself reminds them that some things can't be bought or bullied.